Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I am going to do the meditation for day number 15. Today's May 19th, 2025. I tried to do this earlier and then it just didn't work. I wasn't really in the proper frame of reference to do it. And so I thought I would try it again and see what happens. So I'm going to first go ahead and pull a card and see what card comes up. And then we'll go from there. So here's the, I'm going to shuffle these good. These are the Gilded Tarot cards from Hiro Marchetti. These are the deck that I usually use. I had oops, they're flipped up here. There we go. For a while I had used the Cat Tarot, which is like adorable as you wouldn't believe, but it's very difficult for me to determine the meanings behind the cards. It's just not easy. These cards are much easier to decipher, and they work really well. So the card that I got for today's reading is the Sun. The Sun is like the happiest card in the deck, and it kind of depicts everything that the meditation is actually about making choices and deciding to choose the light as opposed to the darkness. And so this is the card for today's reading, and I'm going to go ahead and start the meditation. As I said, today's day 15, May 19th, 2025, and it's called Stranded at the Airport. I said, this is my second dream about the airport. There is something significant about airports and travel that seem to dominate the news cycle. Perhaps this dream from February 27th, 2024 is relevant to today's world, but we'll have to see. And Metatron says, there has been a lot of chatter about travel, specifically to and from the U.S. People are changing their plans and objectives with regard to that. I said, do you consider it a good idea? And Metatron says, I do. There's a great deal of unrest with regards to traveling. People are questioning whether or this is such a safe option. You deciding not to go there is wise. Your husband would not feel safe in the environment. This is a consideration that you are conscious of. The reality is you yourself would not be safe either. I said I kind of had that feeling simply because I am vocal about my feelings. I am not keen on stepping into a virtual hornet's nest. And Metatron says, so this leads to your dream. I said, okay, in the dream, my husband and I are traveling and we find ourselves stranded at the airport while waiting for a flight. There are a lot of people who are also waiting, but no announcement has been made regarding when we were scheduled to leave. This seems pretty lame dream as it parallels what happens when we fly to the UK. There is an element of realism to it. That is to say that when we travel, we have delays often. Metatron says the delay in your dream signifies more than just a delay. The aspect of dreams are generally deeper because it goes into your consciousness and you simply remember it. It is like the idea of trying to remember something and then you remember it. The whole idea is not about straining yourself to recall something, but allowing things to flow as they will. The act of being stranded at the airport is the same. You have no control over your environment. You are merely there, living their ideal, and the whole sense of it will be conveyed in whatever way is necessary. I said, that sounds really convoluted. And he says, well, let's break this down. You're traveling from one place to another. It does not matter from what place you are coming. What do you tend to think about? I said, well, I think about my situation. Do I have all my belongings in, or is my paperwork in order? Will I have unforeseen problems? Will my plane be late and I miss my connection? Will I be held up at the customs checkpoint? And so on. Metatron says, all these questions are valid questions, perhaps not as something you dwell on, but they are fleeting thoughts. It is the same as the idea of, did I leave the coffee pot on when I left? Or is the iron still on? That's all chatter. Is the iron on? Yeah, chatter. It is pretty useless information now, but at the act of being stranded at the airport is when all this chatter goes on in your mind. The notion that everything that could go wrong will go wrong It's not an idea that you affirm the notion that all of these things could go wrong. But when you travel, your stress levels are heightened. You are sitting in a space along with hundreds of other people, and they are all stressed out. When can you find the balance when the energy is all over the place? In that place, how can you find the balance at all? As you have often remarked, energy is in everything, and that energy that you put into the situation will often be the energy that you get back out of it. So when you're standing in that crowded airport and trying like heck to figure out what specifically is going to happen, the key to all of this is to take in deep breaths and understand that this too shall pass. What feels like a convoluted word salad is not at all convoluted. When I spoke earlier, I was repeating back the chatter that goes on in your mind when you travel. You see this when your husband experiences stress. You have recognized that this is stress, and it's not going to, that his stress is not going to be a reflection on you, and your stress is not a reflection on him. Now, multiply that by 200 or 300 people waiting to board an aircraft. Tempers were going to be short. The concerns of each individual passenger is present, and then when you put all of this stuff together in the pot, you create a stew of emotion and strain. So in essence, that dream is not so much about travel, but it is about taking some time out to breathe, to reflect on the notion that this too shall pass. You are not in a situation by force. You are there by choice. Just as you decide not to travel to a destination, you are coming to that place that says, I will be calm in this time of uncertainty. I will find peace amidst all the chaos. And while it may manifest itself in the humdrum of traveling through an airport, the meaning is very clear. You cannot find peace when you listen to the endless chatter going on around you. You have to look within yourself to contend with the outside stresses. All things can and often will be resolved in due course, just as the announcement will come when the people can board and their flight and continue on their journey. The idea in all of this is to find the calm center and overcome the hard task of blocking out and ignoring the noise. 3 days ago, you were asked about how to come into the outside world and maintain that balance. The way you answered the question was precisely the point I'm trying to make. You can decide how to contend with the outside forces. You be the example of calm and serenity when things are hectic. I said, I was thinking of the movie When Harry Met Sally, and that iconic scene. The woman comes to take the order from the stranger, and she points over at Meg Ryan and says, I'll have what she's having. Metatron says that is the key. When people see that you are calm about things and no longer feel inclined to grumble, then they want some of that for themselves. I said, yes, I'm trying not to grumble about things. And Metatron says, you still do. And I said, I know, I'm working on that. Metatron says, it was at that conversation with God outlines, are you going to simply gripe or are you going to accept things as they are? Sometimes it is important to speak your mind, but it is also sometimes about insignificant things like washing a red sock with the whites. Then it's truly necessary to complain? Perhaps not. You have to decide if your concerns or gripes are truly worth the energy or if it's truly an act of standing one's ground. I said, it sounds like you're saying basically choose your battles wisely. And Metatron says the essence of that is exactly what I'm saying. This is not all about whining. It is about self-preservation. You will know instinctively when your grievances or gripes or if they have rationale behind them. This is why it becomes important for you to embrace and accept the notion that all things are happening are your choice. How do you respond? What do you do? And so on and so forth. That is the reason for your dream. You must choose what option, if any, and then step forward and embrace the choices that you've made. This is why it is imperative for you to make the distinction with this. It will always be up to you. The idea that will follow will be the consequences of your choices. I said, it sounds like choice is a strong classifier with all of these things. How I choose to react and whether or not the choice will be giving me the outcome that I desire. And Metatron says, that is right. That is right. That is it right there. And Sunshine says, you're always making choices. That is what you have often spoken of. You merely must decide if the choices will be conducive to your spiritual growth. I said, so the question regarding the dream is, will getting upset help in the long run, or will accepting and going with the flow, will that reduce my stress levels? And so in essence, this is not about traveling at all. This is about day-to-day interaction. Why does it seem so prevalent to traveling, though? Sunshine says, because that is where much of the stress originates. When you are sitting in an airport terminal, you have a gazillion thoughts going through your mind. It was the perfect place to experience this particular lesson. The next time you travel, you can recall it, and it might save you and your husband from having a row. It is hard to argue with someone who is calm and at peace. I said, I will remember that. Thank you, both. And Metatron says, now you can go back to your radio. And he starts chuckling. I said, oh, thank you very much. So that was where we ended, and that was the meditation for today. And I have to say, okay, when I first started doing this morning, my husband was sitting over there, and he has this chair, and it squeaks and rattles and creaks and everything. And I was doing this meditation while that was going on. And at the end of the meditation, I had just finished reading it, and I was discussing some cards. And this wasn't the card that I pulled initially. The card that I initially pulled was the Ace of Cups. And I thought that it was interesting about beginning an adventure, but I think that this is also plausible for taking a trip, going on an adventure, and seeing the light in all the darkness. But at any rate, right in the middle of my attempts at trying to explain cards, the music starts playing on the other end of the room, and I am kind of annoyed because it's like I'm trying to do this and I need quiet. And I got a little bit upset, and I had to stop the video, delete the video, and start over, which kind of annoyed me. But I said, okay, this is what it is. So what I did this time was, he was in the other room, so I closed the door and did the meditation. So I have him quiet, and he has his quiet, and nobody's bothered by it. So at any rate, but it was my choice if I got upset or got angry or what have you. And I did get a little upset, but I was like, oh, I'm trying to do this. And then I realized as I'm reading this that getting upset about it wasn't really worth it, because all it did was create disharmony in the home. And it's like, I don't want to do that. So when I realized that that I was creating disharmony by getting upset about the video that wasn't perfect anyway, then I thought, okay, maybe it's not a good idea for me to get upset about this, and maybe I just need to take a chill pill. And so that's what I did. And so I had lunch, and then I thought, okay, now I can do the video. Now I have my quiet, and now I can concentrate on this. So, and then I pulled this card. So this card was not only an indicator about the meditation itself, about finding the light and seeing the light of truth coming forward, but it was also for me about when there's disharmony and the light shines in, then maybe the light is the good thing that comes about, and maybe the second try with the video was not a bad idea. So that's what happened, and this is the card that I got. So let me pull another card and see what that is. Okay, this is the Ten of Swords. I think this is like exemplifies the stress, the upset, the frustration that one feels when going, not just when traveling, but when going somewhere and having all these issues to deal with, all these stuff to contend with, and all these like literal virtual swords in your back, where you're sitting there and you're going, I just can't deal with this. This is like totally disappointing. This is totally awful. I don't like this. I'm not happy with it. But the sun will come out. So you got the Ten of Swords. Okay, well, let's see what comes next. The Eight of Wands. The Eight of Wands I pulled, I think, a couple of days ago. And this is like all of the things that are going on. This is what's happening around you. And let me just open the book here, and we'll look at the Eight of Wands. Because I think that this, I can't remember it. Here we go, Eight of Wands. 8 wands fly through the air, indicating speed over fertile and lush countryside. If you've experienced setbacks or delays, then the 8 of Wands will be a welcome sight, for this card always brings swift-moving energy into play. With this card comes sudden burst of activity and excitement following the arrival of good news. The 8 of Wands can also be representative of travel, often by air. And here we go with the airport. The stress at the airport, having to deal with all of this. But then you get on that plane and you're like, here we go. This is like, this too shall pass. This is not a permanent situation, but this is that this will pass. Along with this, the light of the way, showing the way. And we have the 7 of Wands here. So lots of wand energy going on. Let me see. 7 of Wands. I think I've had this one before too. Why can't I remember it? 7 of Wands. A man holding a wand defends his position against 6 others. The open doorway he appears to defend may represent his home. Therefore, he is defending his own ideals. His expression is one of great concentration, although he does not appear perturbed. 7s show the completion of a cycle and can bring changes. Well, if we're at the airport, we're going on a trip, things are going great, everything's hallelujah and wonderful, you get this card, and these are some of the complications that might arise during that time. Final outcome is the 2 of Swords, and that is choice. That is, if I remember correctly, if it's choice. The cards are blocking me from blocking you from seeing all the craziness that I'm doing behind the scenes here. When a woman's face suspended against a cloudy night sky, the golden band covers her eyes and ears. Being blindfolded means she cannot see her present situation. Before her, 2 golden swords are crossed in front of the moon. The swords reflect the conflict of her thoughts. The moon represents her subconscious mind. So, yeah. So all of these cards could in fact be something about travel. They could be something about what you might experience when travel or when you're out in the world and doing your thing. So what you have to do is just maybe keep your eyes on the light. So that's it for today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for going through this with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, and as always, namaste.